Hey there folks, this is Kristen, and I wanted to make just a very quick video about a trend that I'm seeing play out in the media that I find really disturbing. And I don't know that the media is maybe doing it on purpose, or if it's just that they don't understand transgender culture. I've seen Fox try to do it, and recently I saw Channel 8 try to do it. And what they're doing is they're trying to draw this distinction between transgender people and intersexed people. They have a need to try to crowbar the intersex community out of the transgender community and represent that the two are completely different. For the Houston transgender community, saying someone's intersexed and saying someone is trans or transgender is exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing as saying a Native American person is also a human. In Houston, intersex people identify as being transgender. Whenever I first came to the Houston transgender community, the transgender group that was made up of crossdressers, transsexuals, transgenderists, male to female, female to male, just kind of everyone. It was led by an intersex person. That intersex person was on the board of directors. Intersex people have been an integral part of the Houston transgender community. They've run transgender meetings for years and years, and most of the intersex people I know in the transgender community, they wear many hats. They'll call themselves transgender. They'll call themselves trans men or trans women. Sometimes I know a couple of intersex people who refer to themselves as being transsexual. And what they're saying is they walk the exact same path all transsexual people walk. They had to go through the process of transition and all of what that entails. Their biology doesn't change the fact that their history almost exactly aligns with the history of transsexual people. And so, therefore, they self-identify as being transsexual. And part of what really gnaws at me is that some communities within the transgender population in just America, there exists this hierarchy that, in my humble opinion, is really dysfunctional. I'm really grateful that in Houston we don't tend to have that hierarchy. In other places, like intersex people will be at the top. They're somehow the most legitimate, and then under them there would be maybe like post-operative transsexual people, and so on and so forth. This isn't a concept that I've noticed. Other people have noticed. I found this list on a website, and this seems to be how it is in a lot of communities. The crossdressers, the transsexuals don't get along with the crossdressers. The intersex people, they're, different and set apart from transsexual people, and all of them are separate and apart from the drag community, and so on and so forth, and the entire community is fractured, and that is not the way it is here in Houston. Here in Houston, crossdressers, transsexuals, intersex people, drag kings, genderqueer people, on and on and on, we're all equal. No one's better or more legitimate. We're all part of the same community. And we get that, and we work well together. What does that look like? That looks like us creating low-cost medical access. It looks like us ensuring that we have federal grants to pay for transgender housing needs. It looks like us creating, developing, and running our own HIV intervention programs. It looks like us setting up our own transgender center. It looks like us setting up our own transgender library and archive. It looks like us getting the mayor of Houston into politics. It looks like, there's so many examples I can point to of why community cohesion and community identity under this umbrella term transgender works for Houston and works really, really, really well. I've so far posted 2 videos where Nikki herself has expressed a lot of frustration over this tendency to try to somehow pretend that in Houston, intersex people are different than transgender people. That transgender people, it's about choice, and intersex people, those people, it's about biology. I almost came out of my chair a couple of times whenever I watched the Channel 8 special. They got it completely wrong on so many levels. The person that they brought in to talk about intersex people, first of all, asserts from a position of authority that transgender people and intersex people are different, and that transgender people, it's about a disorder. It's about a psychological disorder, and that there is basically no evidence to support the idea that it has any biological basis at all, which is completely false. That's either a statement made out of ignorance or malice. And I don't think that it was made out of malice. I think it's a statement out of ignorance. And then she goes on to relabel intersex people. She claims that we, with quotation marks, we don't like that term. Who's we? The term that she uses to describe intersex people, I've never once heard an intersex person describe themselves in that manner here in Houston. So I really resent this this effort to, like I said, to use a crowbar and just, pull those transgender people out of the transgender community. And I don't appreciate, Nikki doesn't appreciate, and anyone that I talk to about this stuff, none of us appreciate the way that media has tried to separate our community, kind of put a wedge in there. Don't like it, but I want to know what you think.
And I guess my first question is, you consider yourself to be a woman, end of story.
Right.
People out there are assuming and confused by the difference between transgender, intersex. What is the classification you find yourself in? How do you define who Nikki is?
I simply am a heterosexual woman. That's how I define myself. I'm not a medical professional, but I know that I have been diagnosed with a partial androgen insensitivity syndrome, and that falls under a classification medically as a transgendered syndrome.
And to start off with, I think the first area we need to address is the difference between transgendered individuals and intersexed. Doctor, I'll let you start with that.
And the definition and the distinction between the transgender versus individuals who have sexual differentiation disorders or medical conditions is the following. A transgender individual is a male or female who decides or feels actually that they are trapped in the wrong body. And
okay.
What I can tell you is for how the definition is, it is rather a gender identity disorder that needs to be dealt with a whole group of psychiatrists and psychologists. But these individuals clearly do not have any physical problem. So that we like to use instead of intersex, we like to use conditions or disorders of sexual differentiation from the point of view that these individuals have a medical condition in which, for several reasons, which could be chromosomes or endocrine reasons, which means hormonal reasons, or other unidentified reasons, have problems in terms of their development, and there is a discordance between their chromosomes and their hormones, or a discordance between their chromosomes and the appearance of their private area.